let's start with Danny Brown, Dave. This is an album. His new album uh, came out this past Friday. You know what I'm saying? Upside down question mark.
Hmm.
It it kind of surprised me because I think we've talked about Danny Brown here and there on the pod, but he had never been somebody that I was really super interested in that I found particularly uh, for my taste. And then this album really caught my ear and surprised me. And I'm wondering if you had the same feeling listening to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so this is definitely like a new stage, new era for Danny Brown in his career, I would say, because his last album, the one we discussed, Atrocity Exhibition, that came out back in 2016. It's
Mhm.
a while ago. And that's definitely like his opus as far as all of his work to go. Super lyrical, super dense, really unique, really raw stuff. And that album rules. I know I had Really Doe, the single with Earl and Kendrick, on my top 10 songs of that year list. But now Danny is just, finally more successful and a little older. He was already old. And maybe some of that bite might be gone. But now I think he's just making something really quirky, like because the production on this album, which is overseen by Q-Tip, who executive produced this. This production's kind of wild. It's all over the place. But Danny Brown has always been able to ride any beat, and uh, that hasn't changed. And his unique nasally flow is still here. So I think this is exactly what most people would want from Danny Brown. It's a quick listen, and I don't think it has the ambition. Doesn't try and accomplish as much as Atrocity Exhibition did, but that's okay. It kind of reminds me of like Denzel Curry following up
Mm.
Taboo with Zoo. A little lower stakes stuff, but still quite high quality. Still a lot to dig into. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's an interesting sounding album. You know, you mentioned the production on this is a little all over the place, but he has some really interesting collaborators on this too that I think bring out different sounds, including obviously Run the Jewels, you know, the single Three Tears,
Oh yeah.
which is just a banger of a song. Um, but then you look down the list, Blood Orange on Shine, I think brings his trademark sound. I was listening to it and I was like, this sounds a bit familiar, the ambiance in particular of the song. And then when I started to hear Dev Hynes, I saw Blood Orange was on this. I was like, yeah, this makes a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sense. But I feel like they collab pretty well. JPEG Mafia on Negro Spiritual, I think, adds his influence and is really great. And also, I might say this name wrong, but Obong JR on Belly of the Beast.
Yeah, he made quite the impression. I was not familiar with him. He's a Nigerian artist from the UK. Uh, yeah, sparse guest spots, but I think they go a long way considering it's relatively breezy runtime. Um, it's funny. There's not a lot of samples on You Know
Mm-hmm.
What I'm Saying. Trossi Exhibition was very sample heavy, and Danny Brown notoriously paid for all those himself and later remarked that you shouldn't spend 70 grand on samples for an album that no one will purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't go that route this time, you know? But I think what's so cool about the production this time around is that there's just a lot of stuff there, like uh, combat at the end, like very obvious horns. And earlier on, there's like a Savage Nomad guitar stands out. And then Best Life, one of the singles, I think the second single, very obvious orchestral, like violins and cellos and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
Q-Tip didn't make every beat. He only made a Combat and Dirty Laundry and Best Life, but you definitely feels like it was a lot of intent with kind of picking the arrangements this time around, which is cool and probably a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and I think Q-Tip's presence is felt throughout because one of the I guess if I had to pick a style that this falls into, and like you talked about, it's a bit all over the place and eclectic in a good way, but it reminded me a lot of like late '90s hip hop in a sense, or that was at least the feeling I had throughout it. And I think Danny, like you said, he can ride on any beat, but the song that probably stood out to me the most, and we already mentioned some that were great: Three Tears, Savage Nomad, Best Life, Shine, theme song. I really, really thought the theme song was a really great song. Um, you talk about the influence or the way that he constructed the songs and how there's little flourishes and the strings, the trumpet, the xylophone on that song, all just like really, really stand out and make it um, one of the songs on this record that I think I find most unique. And he just glides over that so beautifully. It's a really great song. I really can't say enough about this how this album surprised me because I think if I remember is released back in 2016, I wasn't a big fan. So
Yeah, much more dense last time for sure. Yeah. Uh, Interestingly, Danny, this is out on Warp Records, which is a independent London label. So I would say support Danny Brown if you can, because it definitely goes a longer way. He's not splitting this up with Atlantic or anything. But yeah, I mean, I feel like most people at this point probably know Danny Brown or in on Danny Brown, and if they're not, I guess this will be a lovely surprise if this was the jumping off point. I would probably recommend you start with Old if you're just getting into Danny Brown. Um, you probably know Smoking and Drinking from the Silicon Valley end credits scene that one time. But yeah, Danny Brown's a fantastic artist, and it's great to hear him again because it's been a while.